Hello there, beautiful people. Welcome back. Well, actually, welcome to the first edition of Totally Uninformed. I think I'm going to try out the long form content a little bit just to see how it goes. So, if you're listening to this, this is the first edition of Totally Uninformed. If you're listening to this on YouTube, I will leave links below to SoundCloud and Podbean for you to check out the audio version of this if you're curious. And as I'm talking into a mic into my computer, I have absolutely no idea how this whole podcasting thing works, but I'm gonna give it a go. What's the worst that can happen? So anywho, this isn't gonna be anything too different from the YouTube and BitChute content that I put up. Just me talking about stuff that just bothered me throughout the week. Now, why do I insist on talking to you guys about stuff that bothered me? Well, first of all, why should you guys not be bothered by this? Why should you get to live your life perfectly free of worries in total comfort while I worry about stuff that I have absolutely no control over? Misery loves company, and I'm gonna spread the misery. That's one of my aims in life, I guess. And also, I don't know, maybe it's therapeutic. I can't really afford therapy, so maybe this works in that way. So the first thing, guys, I'm sure you guys have seen this video to some extent. There's this kid. He is 10 or 11 years old. His name is Desmond. He goes by the stage name Desmond is Amazing. And he is 11-year-old, and he is a transgender kid. I think it's male to female. And his parents are really encouraging this transgender thing, which honestly I think is child abuse. I mean, if your kid is 10 years old, I know I'm libertarian, but this is one of those cases where I'm okay with a little bit of a philosophical hypocrisy. In this particular situation, I'm gonna be on the authoritarian side. No way 10-year-old kid gets free will. And no, a 10-year-old kid, there's no transgender in that age, in my opinion. And so his parents are all about letting that kid practice drag, which I've got nothing against drag. It's just one of those art forms that I feel is not for me, but I've got nothing against it. But a kid in drag, that's just, I don't know, a little too much for me to digest. Anyway, so there are these videos emerging of this kid, and he is in a gay bar doing drag. And then there's grown up men, throwing money at him. There's this, I mean, if you guys look at it on YouTube, I'm sure you'll find it if you guys search for it. And it's just really disturbing. I wanted to make a video about it, but I decided not to because those images, it's just, I don't know, it's just incredibly bothersome to me. Now, I heard this phrase. I heard it from Gavin McInnes in his podcast, Get Off My Lawn. I think he attributes this quote to somebody. And the quote goes something like this: the left thinks that people on the right, such as ourselves, we are evil. Whereas right-wingers, we just think that the left is wrong. That's generally our thing. This is one of those cases. I don't like using the word evil a lot because I think it's hyperbolic. But anyone pushing this kind of agenda where it leads to an 11-year-old kid doing drag in a gay bar in front of men throwing money at him, I think that verges on evil. That probably is evil. I don't know, man. It's just one of those things that I found really, really disturbing. Probably the most disturbing on account of so many disturbing things that happening. Everything else that happened this week, over the last few weeks, I would say this was top of the charts. I don't know what this is getting to. I mean, I would like to believe that even 10 years ago or 5 years ago, this would have been considered child abuse. I mean, today, when we say it's child abuse, that's controversial. But I think 10 years ago, most people would go like, yeah, that's child abuse. I don't get it. I don't get it. Speaking of things that's disturbing, you guys aware of what's happening with Patreon and Sargon? Okay, Sargon of Akkad, massive YouTuber, big time YouTuber, really popular. Anyways, Patreon banned him. Now the problem with this particular banning, guys, this is tech companies putting in some major crackdown, and I don't really see a light at the end of this tunnel. So you have Patreon that banned him. And the reason why they banned him is because he used the N word to describe someone who calls himself alt-right. His exact name is escaping me. Man, I should really write these things down. Gah, anywho. So he was in a conversation with someone, and I think it might have been Richard Spencer, or it might not have been. And this was on somebody else's stream, and this was not on Sargon's main channel, and he called Richard Spencer a white N-word. They were having a debate about something. Anyways, now, the reason why Patreon banned him, and the reason why this is important, is because that was not a violation of Patreon's terms of service. Sargon did not say it in Patreon, he didn't even say it in his own YouTube channel. But Patreon, regardless of the fact that this was not a violation of their terms of service, just banned him from Patreon. Now, Patreon is a major source of his income, right? So him being banned from that platform, that's the same thing as, that's almost as bad as you being fired from your job. That's about it, right? And then he goes to this other platform called Subscribestar. And these same social justice warriors now go to Subscribestar, which is a new upcoming, I don't think it's as big, but it's definitely trying to be. It's a substitute to Patreon, at least that's how it's advertised. It's a substitute to Patreon, except that these guys actually value free speech. So anywho, Sargon goes to Subscribestar, and the same people, I guess, bully Subscribestar or something like that, and then PayPal tells Subscribestar, hey, you cannot use our payment services. So people that are on Subscribestar now, people that generate a living from that, PayPal is one of the major payment services used in these fundraising platforms like Patreon. It's not the only payment option, but it is one of the major, most important payment options. So Subscribestar, last time I checked, cannot use PayPal. And a lot of people who are on the platform, I think Tim Pool is on the platform, he had his video up saying that he doesn't know if he's going to get paid or how he's going to get paid. So we have these tech companies that have decided, you know what, you don't think like us, you're off. And now we have payment services. I guess this isn't exactly new. Alex Jones probably had something similar happen to him. Payment services are now chiming in, saying, yeah, we'll help you guys weed out all center-right opinions in every sphere of the internet. It's one thing to be silenced in Facebook or YouTube or any other platform, but to have payment services join in and decide, you know what, we're just going to get rid of these guys. Whew, this is, I don't know what to make of this. I mean, I guess one of the advantages of being a libertarian such as myself is that a lot of the times we take the easy way out, you know. We go like, no government intervention, free market, you know. And we take the easy way out because we honestly believe that a lot of the times if we have government interfere, they will make things worse. And I do hold true to that belief, especially, you know, 2 years down the line or 6 years down the line, we have a liberal president. I don't think he's gonna help the process if government intervenes. But anywho, I don't know what's gonna happen. I think a lot of these progressive people thought that with the internet, they're gonna have a total monopoly on people's thoughts. And as it turned out, that with the internet, even though people who are center right on most issues, they're ignored by all forms of mainstream. They figured out, okay, at least we can talk amongst ourselves. And I think a lot of these social media progressive companies, they actually thought that with social media, people will essentially bend the knee to their thoughts. Or, let me rephrase that. I think a lot of these people actually believed that all of us out in the real world, we think like them. We think like the executives at Google or the executives of Facebook. I think a lot of these people honestly believed that most of us out in the real world are actually, people at the Young Turks or something like that. And I think social media companies or tech giants recently, I don't know when, maybe 3-4 years, maybe a few years earlier, just realized that, hey, we're not all about that progressive mindset, and I think they don't know what to do with that. And I think a lot of these bannings and censorships is just these guys acting in fear. And I don't know what's going to happen, because if the payment processes, if they start towing this line, then we're screwed. There's actually all the content creators that that make a living making content. It's not going to be feasible for them, and so I don't know. Well, the good news is a lot of people, they're really leaving Patreon. Who was it? Sam Harris closed off Patreon, deleted his Patreon. So that's a lot of people. Sam Harris was pretty big. Dave Rubin, Dr. Jordan Peterson, they've been very vocal critics of the whole thing, and they're talking about building an alternative platform. We don't know when that will be. Things like this, you usually can't rush them, but I guess we'll have to wait and see. I don't know, man. I really hope some alternative comes, because honestly, I don't trust the government to take care of this. Even if, even let's say we live in a world where people who are our political allies are in government. Even then, I don't expect the government to take care of this, because I don't know. Now, I guess that is my easy way out of weaseling into out of these situations. If not the government, then what? I don't know what. My go-to response is hoping the free market will take care of it, but I guess there will be some time lapse between some solution. Dave Rubin and Jordan Peterson, they have been mentioning that they're really building an alternative platform, and God, I hope something happens, because I don't know. I really want to know how people in the old days, the real OGs, people like Dennis Prager or Rush Limbaugh or even Sean Hannity. I mean, when they were started out, I'm not saying that all these people have the same political view, but when these guys started out, I wonder how they made things financially feasible. I mean, I guess a lot of those guys started in talk radio, right? I guess radio doesn't have the same level of censorship. Uh, I don't know. I never really got into the American radio scene, so I don't know. But yeah, this is very depressing. Speaking of depressing stuff, and speaking of government sucking, are you guys keeping up with what's happening with the wall? Or more accurately, funding for the wall? Things are not looking good, guys, or at least not looking good at the time of me speaking into my computer. So here's when I last checked, and I admit I've been staying away from this particular news because it's depressing. So Donald Trump had a sit down with Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer, and they were like, "You guys ain't getting the wall." I think Donald Trump was talking about trying to get this passed in Senate, and Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi, they were like, "Forget Senate. This isn't even passing the House. This bill would never pass the House. You'll never get $5 billion funding for that wall." And Donald Trump was like, "No, we won't." And Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi, and all of the mainstream media, even online alternative media that are liberal, I mean, I'm talking about the Young Turks and stuff, they were like, "Yeah, this bill, the House will never vote for funding for the wall." And last time I checked, I think this was 12 hours ago, the House passed. The House approved $5 billion of funding for the wall that Donald Trump was talking about. Now this will go to the Senate, and yeah, this is something that could be killed in the Senate. But I don't know. I don't know, man. This is my concern with the government. Why do we have the government? From what I understand, we have the government for two reasons: secure our borders and protect private property. Those are the only two reasons why we have a government, right? I don't know. Those are the only two reasons that I have in mind. And the government sucks at doing those two things. Now, I understand all of the blame should not be attributed to Donald Trump. He is trying. But yeah, his hands, I mean, his hands are tied to a large extent. He did say he's not going to pass a bill, and he is threatening government shutdown. So with the government shutdown, he once said there will be a government shutdown, and then the media reported that there was a little bit of a retreat. He kind of walked back, and now he's saying no, there will be a shutdown if there is no funding for the wall. And I agree with him. I agree with him. People that voted for him, they want a wall. This was a big promise. I mean, the First Steps Act that he signed, criminal justice reform, it's good. But the thing with criminal justice reform, this is my issue with it. It is largely bipartisan. I think you did not necessarily need Donald Trump for this, and even if you want to attribute this to him, which I do, this is one of the easier things to do. I don't think this would have been too big of a challenge. So this should not be too high on the priority. And I guess, I don't know, maybe I'm just not particularly invested in that issue. But the wall, definitely a much bigger priority, in my opinion. So yeah, I don't know what's gonna happen. And a lot of the people who are conservatives, and they're like, you know what? If there's no wall, we're not voting for him in 2020. Well, if not him, then I don't blame these guys. I totally understand. You vote for a politician or you vote for a particular person because you have certain issues in mind, and if those promises are not kept, what do you do? And then the question is, well, what's the other alternative? Would Beto O'Rourke or Bernie Sanders, or who was the Democrats did a poll on who their top leading candidates are. I think Bernie Sanders is number one, and he is number one by a huge margin. Beto O'Rourke is probably two or three. I can't remember. Man, I should have looked these things up before. And number three, the third name is escaping on me. Oh, Joe Biden. Joe Biden, I think. I don't know if Joe Biden's two or three, or if Beto O'Rourke is two or three, but those are the top three picks. So I don't know if Donald Trump is not back in 2020, would any of those guys be a better alternative? I don't know. I don't think so. I don't think so. Those guys hate the wall. I don't know, man. Politically speaking, it's just, this is what I don't get. In my ideal world, the government would just do two things: keep our border safe and protect private property, and that's it. Everything else I would ask the government to stay out because they suck. And by the way, $10 billion, more than $10 billion, is going to Central America. Not just one. I think there were 2 or 3 Central American countries that will get that aid. Honduras might be there. Mexico, perhaps. Mexico's not Central America, I know, but I think they get that aid too. It's just bizarre. I should have looked this up. See, that's the title, Totally Uninformed. It makes sense, right? So, yeah, so Central American countries, maybe Mexico's in there too, gets $10 billion of aid. $10 billion for Central American countries, but we don't have $5 billion for the wall. Could someone please explain this to me? I don't understand. I mean, when I say I don't understand, I'm not saying that rhetorically. I genuinely don't understand this politics of international aid. There's something, I don't, if one of you guys could clarify this for me, if you're watching this on YouTube, leave a comment, or on BitChute, leave a comment. There's something about this foreign aid thing that I don't understand. I mean, even if you're a Democrat, even if you're left-leaning, I think most Democrats that I've spoken to, they have different issues in mind. They're like, no, we have use for this money at home. Maybe Democrat would go like, okay, let's give this money to Planned Parenthood or something like that. People on the right, we generally think this money should go to our veterans. The wall definitely could use some of this money. I mean, there's definitely use for this money at home, but we give it overseas. I don't really understand the politics of this, because this seems to, I mean, from what I understand or speculate, this should be a losing issue for most politicians. Democrats or Republicans, they would prefer to keep their money at home, right? I don't get it. This is just one of those things that just boggles my mind. I don't see, we don't have $5 billion to protect our southern border, but we have $10 billion for Central America. I don't understand this. Just something about that equation does not make sense. Just does not make sense. I don't get it. Speaking of governments sucking and why they should be very limited, what do you guys think about the troops in Syria? Trump talking about withdrawing troops in Syria. Man, this is one of those things where, yeah, the people on the right, they are divided, and all of America is pretty well divided. This is the thing. This is my issue on that. I don't believe the United States should be the big daddy of the world. Because, and I don't mean that in a bad way, it's just that we have issues at home, right? There are people that need our resources, and we need to protect our own borders with those resources. That being said, Now that's one side of the equation, right? The other side of the equation is the Middle East, man. This is, I think it was Steven Crowder that called it the sphincter of the world. And he was not wrong. It's just insanely terrible how barbaric that part of the world is. And if the United States comes back, I hope I'm wrong, but I feel the things that we are afraid of, like, a resurgence of ISIS, that could really potentially happen. And then there's this other issue. I guess I have a hard time answering these questions with my libertarian philosophies because I'm really more of a foreign policy isolationist. I really feel that, our resources should be used at home. That being said, I do understand that there are costs to pay for that isolationism policy, if that's the right word. And one of the costs is, dude, there are these people called the Kurds. And these guys were fighting with the United States. They were on our side. And with the United States, if they pull out, those guys are toast. Those Kurdish people, those guys are absolutely toast. Men would be killed. Women most likely would be raped. Some of them would be sold as slaves. Women would be sex slaves. There would be a lot of torture, and it's just one of those things where I'm like, we should be dealing with our problems at home, and at the same time, there's that. And I don't know, I guess this is one of those things where anything that the president does, and regardless of who the president is, assholes such as myself would always be able to criticize. If the president's like, bring back our troops, I would be like, oh, look at the Kurds, they're gonna die now. Can we really allow that? If the president doesn't want to bring back our troops, I would be like, hey, don't we have issues at home? So I don't know, this is one of those things where I guess none of us really know what the right answer is, but we all want to criticize because, I don't know, I guess we all want to sound smart and stuff. So that's the list of things that's been really bothering me. The wall definitely high on the list. The highest on the list is Desmond is amazing, and his parents, and that kid being exploited. The wall definitely on top. Anyways, you guys, that's all I had to say. Thanks for letting me rant and vent with you guys. Thanks for sticking around. If you managed to stick around this, whoa, man, I've gone past 20 minutes. I didn't realize I could talk this much. Would you guys believe I didn't even use the magic of the pause button up until now? Yeah, you guys don't care. Anywho, you guys, I will talk to you guys soon. Take care. Be safe.